Okay, so I'm gonna start the competition politics versus democracy discussion with the president, since that's a big topic today with the election of the president and all this craziness that's going on around it with the candidates and Trump being involved in 2 assassination attempts supposedly. And I'll say supposedly because with the nature of competition politics, it's hard to take anything at face value because they'll do just about anything they can to, let me fix my hair, to win. So, and if they did the process of electing the president properly as required by the Constitution of the United States, there wouldn't be any candidates, self-declared candidates or party-nominated candidates. So nobody would know a would-be assassin wouldn't know that a person was a candidate or was even being considered to be the president, and there would be no way then to judge if that candidate could be elected anyway. So it would be, who would you assassinate if under those conditions? You wouldn't have anybody to assassinate. But that comes back to, well, what's the purpose of the president? And do we actually need them? In competition politics, they are the leader of the country. And some people will say the leader of the free world, which is total BS. Just don't see it properly. In a collective governing system that's either a democracy or a Republican form of government, which is just a collective democracy, do we need a president? And that gets back to how many presidents do we actually have today? And which ones are over the others, or does anyone have more power than the others? Or does anyone have power at all? And so when we think about that, do we need a president? Simple answer is no. And I know that might hurt people's feelings, but no, we don't need a president in our system at all, for any reason. And so you ask, why do we have presidents? And I said, presidents. Because it allows the real authority in the system to concentrate on other things and to recess and to make things actually operate more efficiently, instead of having the body do it, the real body do everything. And to, can they do it? Yeah. Why? Because the authority is the United States in Congress assembled. That's the union. Okay? Do they need a president? Well, no, they don't. In fact, under the Articles of Confederation, the full Congress didn't have a designated president at all. Could they choose somebody to preside? Yeah, they could. That's their prerogative. And what would that presiding entail? Well, it just makes basically to make sure that they use the process for the legislative process to reach a majority consensus properly. So they really didn't have any power. So where did the president come from? Well, when they had the Committee of the States, which sat in recess of the full Congress, they had one representative per state as a member of the Committee of the States. And the Committee of the States had the full power to do all the other things that the full Congress could do. Because each state only had one vote anyway. And they had to reach a majority consensus of 9 of 13 states anyway. So they didn't need more than one representative per state in the Committee of the States. And they chose one of that number to preside over the Committee of the States, provided no person served as president more than 1 year in any 3 consecutive years. Okay? And they counted that by the month, because the Committee of the States was not seated during when the full Congress was seated and was in session. They were only in session when the full Congress was at recess. So if the full Congress is at recess in session 3 months of the year, then 9 months of the year it would be the Committee of the States. So if there was a person chosen to be the president of the Committee of the States, and it didn't have to be the same person through that whole period. If one person reached their other term limit, which was no more than 3 years in any 6 consecutive years, then that person would have to leave the Committee of the States for another person, and so they'd have to choose another president for the Committee of the States. They didn't have a continuous term limit they didn't get to serve 1 year just because they were chosen to be the president of the Committee of the States. So, what was the purpose? Well, they still only had their one vote from their state as a member of the Committee of the States. So the only authority they had was to make sure that the legislative process was conducted in an orderly fashion. Okay? Presides over the process. They don't have any additional authority. So that when they wrote the Constitution of the United States, the presidents in the Constitution established in the Constitution, didn't have any additional authority either to do anything. So what did the Committee of the States do? Well, if you go to Article 9 of the Committee of the States, the first thing that they did in the Committee of the States was they established any subcommittees to manage the general affairs of the United States and chose officers in order to head those subcommittees, which is exactly the executive departments, okay, with a principal officer. Now notice they didn't say that the principal officer had to be one of the Committee of the States. The principal officer could be anybody they wanted to head up that subcommittee for that executive department. So when they created when they established the Constitution of the United States, those departments that they created to manage the general affairs of the government under the Committee of the States direction. So they established the departments, they assembled the departments, and they directed those departments. Yes, there was a principal officer, but that principal officer was subordinate to the Committee of the States, which is the Union. Okay? Same way with the president today. He doesn't get any extra authority. So that's one president. The second president is the Chief Justice of the United States, Supreme Court. Why? Well, Article 9 of the Articles of Confederation assembled a court to adjudicate the conflicts and disputes between the states, and to adjudicate any grievances that the states had when laws that they made disenfranchised one or more states or disproportionately affected them. They could file a grievance because of that. Okay, it's properly made law in a properly assembled legislative assembly, but it can still disenfranchise or disproportionately affect one or more states or the people of those states. And in those cases, they can file a grievance to have to show that they are being disproportionately affected. And that's in Article 9 of the Articles of Confederation 2, Article 9, Clause 2. So when they permanently seated the justices, the pool of justices that they would draw from, then they also appointed someone, an officer, to preside over the proceedings of the court. They don't participate in the court. So the Chief Justice is not a member of the pool and cannot be selected to hear and decide the case. They're only there to preside over the proceedings of the Supreme Court, to make sure that the court is operated properly. to make those decisions, to decide those matters of dispute and grievance between the states. Okay? That's our second president. The third president is the president of the Senate. Now, the president of the Senate actually has more power than all the rest of them. But notice that the first two don't have any decision-making powers or leadership powers. And the president of the Senate doesn't either. The president of the Senate is not a leader either, or a decision maker. What do? Well, they preside over the United States in Congress assembled, over the Union, to make sure that the Union is assembled properly and that the Union functions properly, where? In Congress, which actually has control over how the rest of the government functions and is assembled, because the United States in Congress assembled establishes, assembles, and directs the other departments of our government, the executive departments and the judicial departments. So what power does the president of the Senate have? Well, president of the Senate makes sure that that Congress is properly assembled and functions properly. Which today, even though Harris doesn't know what her job is, if she would go to the Constitution of the United States, she would know that the government is improperly assembled and that it functions improperly. And she has all the authority to make whatever changes or to do whatever needs to be done to make sure that it is properly assembled, including raising the entire governing system and reassembling it the way that it's supposed to be based on Articles 1, 2, and 3 of the Constitution of the United States. Okay? That's how much power the vice president has, which is the most power that any government official has. Because I don't care what the Chief Justice or what the Supreme Court thinks or what the president or what the parties think or anything, if the president of the Senate decides in their opinion that the government is not properly assembled and is not properly functioning, they have the power to correct it. Do they have the power to lead themselves or make decisions themselves? No. They only have the power to make sure that the states as the union can function collectively to make those decisions and to lead. That's a whole different ball of wax. Okay? But reality is, no, we do not need a president in the system at all. Because the states actually are forced to work together anyway. They can do anything they want as long as they what? As long as they do it together. Okay? This isn't like competition politics where they're competing for the authority to do it, to be the leader and be the decision maker, make policy. No. We have government is set up. The states must work together as a union at all times. And it's the vice president's job to make sure they do. And we'll continue later.